There's a show that you have to see, and I don't know if everyone's seen this, called Ozark.
Oh yeah.
Have you guys seen this show?
Yeah.
It's on Netflix. It is phenomenal. What's really interesting to me is that little girl, the one who plays Ruth Langmore, the blonde, the daughter.
Yes.
She is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And you can tell she's one of those actors who gets that the more interesting character work always happens in silence. Do you guys get this? The most interesting character work on film always happens when you do not speak. Okay, now why do you think this is?
Stillness.
Stillness? What do you mean by that?
I saw a play the other day, the Denzel Washington.
Oh, you saw the Eugene O'Neill.
The Comet.
Yeah. Iceman Cometh, yeah.
And there were like 15 actors, and they were all amazing, but they were so still for most of the time.
Yeah.
But they were so present.
Right. And in their stillness, what did you get?
Their presence.
Their presence and the understanding of what? What did that lead you to? Seeing their presence. What did it lead you to
The
get about
depth
that?
of what's happening all over although there were actors who were pretending even to be sleeping, but
Yeah.
there was so much there.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Well, look, it is through, and this is especially, it's true on stage as well, but it's especially true on film, that when you do not have dialogue, the reaction and the understanding of the character in that specific environment, as an audience, we start to feel, okay?
Yeah.
We start to take it in. If we hear you talk, and you always want to remember this in film, the first time we hear you speak, we see you before we listen to the words coming out of your mouth, okay? So there's an interesting element of understanding story through the character when they are quiet. We can feel that story more specifically and more clearly than we can actually understand it when you explain what the plot, circumstance, or moment of the story that you're in. So film, in that understanding, is really a behavioral art form for the actor, okay? You want to be as specific as you can, moment to moment, in your body, way more than you want to understand the overall subtext of what you're saying. Do you guys get that difference? So a lot of the time actors get caught when they don't have dialogue not knowing what to do, which means that they're not committed to the life that they're creating. They're trying to get to some level of explanation for the audience, and that's a huge danger for young actors. You do not want to sit there and explain character. You want to sit there and live in the character. And that moment-to-moment life, always in film and in television, starts from your body. Starts from the physical connection you have to the overall circumstance and environment of the scene and of the moment-to-moment life. Okay? So when you see the Ozarks, Ruth Langmore, who plays this kid, she's got to be 19. The minute we see her, she's the Godfather. She is a 19-year-old OG, old gangster, right? And we get that sensation because of her stillness. We see her power because of her stillness. We see her fortitude, her strength, her ambition, her, killer, her gangster, all because of her stillness. Throughout that whole show, throughout the first 10 episodes, she does not do a lot. She is being very specific about what the moment-to-moment transition and arc of her whole character is by living in that physically. Living in the connection she created physically, living in the understanding of the environment she created physically, living in the nature of how that environment works on her. Go ahead, sit down. Living in the nature of how that environment works on her. So when you see that level of specific work, that's what allows us as an audience to invest. She also, because she doesn't do a lot, in other words, she's not acting, she's living in the character, right? Because she doesn't do a lot, moment to moment, we are constantly in suspense of what her choices are going to be, what's going to happen to her, how she's going to deal with what's going to happen to her. And this is a great thing with film. The less you talk, the more mysterious you become. The more mysterious you become, the more interested and invested an audience becomes. And especially in episodic TV. The great example of that is Breaking Bad. The less he talked, the more we did not know what he was going to do. Right? So throughout the first 3 seasons of Breaking Bad, the moments of absolute panic where he's running around trying to figure out how to build this drug empire becomes the most interesting elements. When his wife starts to find out and how those two connect and relate, it's more in the moments of silence. Without dialogue, do we see the tension? Do we see how difficult it is for this marriage to stay alive? And we see his panic. Do you guys get this? This is a very interesting element with silence on film. So there are very specific behavioral moments in episodic television that link us to the character, that keep us wanting to see what happens next. That doesn't necessarily happen all the time through dialogue. It happens a lot of the time through their behavior, okay? So really, the more specific you are with behavior, the more you can keep the audience in suspense. The more general you are with behavior, the less we see how the environment works on your character and how the story moves from one place to the next place to the next. Is that clear for everybody? It's a trick to realize, because I always love doing movies where I don't have to talk a lot. Do you know what I mean? Because it makes me get very specific about the life I'm creating. If I have a lot of dialogue, it becomes, I gotta find a space in which my body can connect to what I'm saying. Because you want to remember, it is always behavioral, the moment-to-moment life in film, because of just the nature of the format and the visual medium, okay? So when you work in this class, what you're hoping to get is clarity on how to look at a scene that has no dialogue and create a life inside of you that has behavioral, moment-to-moment repercussions on the character's life and the environment that they're in, okay? It's one of the toughest things for actors to learn about this. Now, there's also a thing that comes with behavioral. You cannot be herky-jerky behavior. If you do this on film and you're not Robin Williams, you're going to have problems, right? You get to learn how to have grace with your body. And I tell people, all great film actors, because film, even in the beginning of the medium, were dancers. They really had a certain level of grace and ease to whatever they're doing, so that their behavior was smooth. It was graceful. It was not staccato and herky-jerky. And one of the tricks of that is to have ease in your performance, okay? Ease is extremely critical to film. If we see tension in your performance, we see the actor. Do you guys get me? And we see you guys working. If we don't see tension, even in a tense scene, then we see the character and the life you're creating. So half of this preparation, which is I always feel the most important, is tension and release, which we do after we do eyeline drill. Tension and release, you want to learn to drill it in class so that you can apply it when you get to set. And all people find some way to loosen their body before action. You do that enough, you train your brain and your body to automatically have a sense of looseness and ease when you get to action. Action is the scary word. right? We're sitting there going, we hear action, we go, oh, we have to act, right? Instead of action being an opportunity to thrust us into the material. So the more ease you have, the more you are out of your own head and in a moment-to-moment existence that comes from a physicality that you connected to in script, the easier and more ease you're going to have in performance. So it's a real trick being able to look at text and go, how do I get a sense of the behavioral moment-to-moment life of the character? Part of that comes from first trying to be as specific as you can with your imagination about what you see from the words. These are not things, these scripts are not things that you want to be in an adversarial position with. It is not a contest. You are not trying to break the script or trying to win over the script. You want to be in partnership with the words. That starts when you read something by engaging your imagination and see as many details as you possibly can from text so that the words become inspiration, not prison, okay? You always want the words to feed you and starting to see the character. So automatically, the minute you see a scene heading, interior, exterior, your brain starts to visualize. The more you start to visualize, the easier it is for you to start to identify the moment-to-moment life of the character and how you physically can inhabit that. Okay? But that starts with your approach to text. So there's this text today. We do, everyone new here? Is this their first time? A couple people? Your first time? Yeah. So essentially what we do is we do two drills. One is an eyeline drill, which engages your imagination. Omar will give you something to look at the blank wall, and you want your imagination to work so hard that it has physical impact, that it moves your body to do something. We give you 3 different things to look at, okay? Then after that, we do attention and release, where we really squeeze all parts of our body and release our voice by screaming, fuck you. Who are we going to say to?
George is here, man.
I think Chris gets it. Chris was on set yesterday.
Oh, he was on set yesterday?
Yeah.
How'd you do?
You figured that's why you're fuck you, Chris, right? Because he was shaky.
Yeah.
He was shaky on it. He didn't come. Yeah, he didn't come clean to that. So we do that to make sure we release our voice. But what also it does, this tension and release, it gets us out of our head and gets us in our body. So by the time, and then we give you the script. So by the time you get the script, hopefully, your mind is engaged, your body is in comfort, and your imagination has an opportunity to start clarifying and specifying, guys. That's how you want to read film scripts. You do not want to read film scripts like you are doing math homework. It is danger. It is not engineering schematics. There is no right way to interpret or approach it. So it is an imaginative medium, which means that you get to read it like you were 5 years old. And the more that you read it like you were a kid, the more details you see from the text. The more details you see from the text, the easier it is to understand the physical moment-to-moment life of the scene. Do you guys get that equation? Without that, you can get stuck, okay? And the minute you get stuck, all things go to your head, your body shuts down, you start working instead of living. And if you look at all the whole cast of the Ozark, it's really a wonderful group of actors, that they are all very specific about the physical moment-to-moment life of their character's arc and how that arc is going to keep us in suspense. And when you get to the end of season 1 on Ozark, you are in anticipation of what's about to happen. And one of the great actresses of all time, Laura Linney's in there, and the way she's playing this mother, at first you got one vision of her, and it's through episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, she completely turns the other way and becomes an advocate for something that she felt, when we first saw her, you feel like she would never advocate before. And this is a level of her genius, that we saw her one way, and then at the end of season 1, she is a completely new entity for the audience. This is the genius of that type of work. Anna Baum did the same thing in Breaking Bad. Edie Falco did the same thing in The Sopranos. They took something very specific that they saw and translated that into a physical transformation into character throughout each episode, throughout each season. And that's what leads to great work. Do you guys get that? And that's why we stayed captivated to The Sopranos, to Ozark, and to Breaking Bad.
Who did you reference in Breaking Bad?
Huh?
Who did you just reference?
Anna Baum.
Who did?
She's played the wife. Oh, she was wonderful, right? Yeah, she was. Every time when we first see her, you're like, oh, she's a nice little housewife. And then you're like, oh, okay, she's not that nice. And then you're like, oh, she's gonna get revenge. And then you're like, oh, she sides with him. That transformation that literally you could tell started in her body from being very open to being very hard was a beautiful transformation. And of course, it kept us in suspense with what was going to happen with him. Do you get me? So this is the great understanding of what that physicality represents for a show, is it keeps us all wondering what's next. And that is critical for episodic TV. Okay? It's critical for your understanding of how to approach text, and it's critical to understand that invests us in the suspense. And we need to be invested. If we knew what was going to happen on a show, would we watch? No. Well, the only thing that we knew that was going to happen on the show that we watched was Friends, Ross and Rachel, right? We all knew Ross and Rachel was going to happen at some point. So then we were waiting for the when, right? When this was going to happen. But yet and still, the suspense of how those two connected relationship-wise kept us invested. And this is what makes episodic TV so much fun. Okay? Clear? Are there any questions? Yeah.
It's just about that. I don't know if I can talk about this now.
Yeah.
The scene I have to do.
Yeah.
The first scene is I'm the president of the country, and I come with the bodyguards. That's the first scene. And then I look at the guy and ask, "Are you so and so?" And he says yes, and I hit his face.
Oh, that's great.
So, but I don't have
Oh
time
God,
for
I would
stillness.
love if somebody did that to Trump. That would be really wonderful.
Everybody would, but I don't. There is no time for stillness. I mean,
Remember, yeah. See, the first thing we see of her, and the best example of this is West Wing. Martin Sheen. The first time we saw him, looked like a president. So your first connection has to be as a stateswoman. We have to physically see that level of power on you, that level of dignity on you. We have to see that connection in specific to your country as a representative, as somebody that is whatever choice you make about what type of leader you are, we have to see. Because when we first see you walk, we're going to go, oh, that, and then we're going to see you smack somebody, it's going to give us the gasp. And that's what you want. Oh my God, she just hit her. Hit him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to be very specific of what type of president she is, how she represents her country, how did she get here. A lot of that is going to be through your imagination. Some of that's going to come out through text. But no, the physical presence of that walk is going to determine half of the scene. Do you get me? You're going to determine half of our understanding of the character, so that when you get to the slap, it should shock us. Do you get me? It should give us this as an audience, so you have to really know what instigated that behavior, especially for a stateswoman. A stateswoman to slap somebody in the face. Is it in the face?
Yeah.
Good. So a stateswoman to slap somebody in the face is a very potent moment. So you better know what was the catalyst for her to smack somebody like that. Do you get me? And for her to lose her level of dignity. Obama should have smacked a lot of people. A lot of people. Someone didn't even call him president, and he still didn't smack them. Do you know? I do not put it past Trump to smack a motherfucker one of these days. Like you're just talking to him. You know what I mean? So just know that if you make that, you have to be very specific about how your body is in connection to that scene. Because that moment-to-moment life is specific. Where are you coming from? What's the previous circumstance? What's the previous circumstance that leads you out? Are you already in frustration, tension, anxiety? Why? What happened right before that led to that anxiety, tension, and frustration? Then what does this person who comes into your purview like that do to you that would make you lose your power in that way, or dignity? Do you know what I mean? So all these things are specific, and then you got to know what type of person she is. Do you know what I mean? Is she a leader of the people? Even a person of the people wouldn't necessarily smack somebody in the, coming out of, an embassy or something. So then that becomes interesting. So all these choices you get to identify and create, whether they're in text or not. And you guys want to remind yourself, text will not give you everything. It never will. You get to be inspired by your imagination from the facts in text to connect those dots. You will never get everything explained because film and television are a series of moments, right? So they can't give you an essay about who this character is. That's your job, to be creative and imaginative about what type of president she is. Do you get me? How she got elected. Where does she come from? All influences why she would smack a motherfucker.
Thank you.
Okay? Are there any other questions? Okay, well, let's take it through.